As many of you know, I just went on Vipassana, and it was hard, as I've said, and also very rewarding. But for me, one of the challenges of the environment was um, having a teacher, Goenka in this case, who had a wife who sat next to him who didn't say anything on the video. She just sits there quietly and doesn't teach, and he teaches a lot. And I would say his teaching style is not super resonant for me. It might be good for beginners, but he is quite redundant. He repeats himself a lot. And he asks you to not do any other kind of practices when you're doing Vipassana. Now, no disrespect to Vipassana, but I've taken Vipassana from other teachers, and there's kind of hardline ways of doing it, and there's softer ways of doing it. And my experience is that people who have a strong feminine side tend to teach in a softer way, whether that's men or women. But with Goenka, he's like kind of on the hard line of like, you're going to sit here for 100 hours and do nothing else, because that's how you achieve enlightenment. And for me, the idea that Siddhartha, Gautama the Buddha, was somehow some perfect being who achieved that through lifetimes of practice doesn't actually resonate. It doesn't work for me as a motivational tool for why I would want to sit through that much pain. Because I don't think he was perfect. I've never met a perfect being who somehow transcended their humanity and become some flawless individual. I just don't think they exist. Because if you take those beings out of their context of soul, often male, isolated situations, and put them in a partnership with a woman, let's say, and watch how they are with their partner, they become quite different as people. Now, I'm not disrespecting or saying there's anything wrong with people who give their lives to service. I think of Thich Nhat Hanh, who was incredible and was an amazing teacher and chose a very particular path to give the way he gave. And I'm at his feet. I think he was a very, very developed human being that did a lot of good in the world. No criticism. But when I ended up getting out of Vipassana, I read about the Buddha's wife. And the Buddha, before he was the Buddha, abandoned his wife without telling her to go off and become enlightened, and left her at home alone with a newborn child. And she suffered as a result. She lost a lot of her social status. She got accused of infidelity. He then came back years later and took her son away without her consent. And so there's this silent feminine who ultimately ended up becoming a very devoted practitioner of Buddhism, but it's partly because she had to in order to survive. She had to take an ascetic path because her economic security was torn away from her. So she needed to become pretty humble and found her own way through this paradox of loving Gautama the Buddha into him becoming enlightened and also dealing with an absent husband. But that story is never told because the stories are told by men over and over and over again who want to keep the Buddha as this perfect venerated being. And so the diminishing of the feminine happens over hundreds and hundreds of years of not telling her story. So there's not a lot of evidence of what happened to her or how she found her own pathway to freedom through very different conditions that were put on her by this man who's celebrated as a perfect being. So that gets me all fired up, all kinds of fired up, because I have been subject to patriarchal teachers a lot, and I don't find them to be complete. I find them to be incomplete, but sold as a complete thing. And I've written about this, 6,000 years of patriarchy, the suppression of the feminine, all of that. Not because I'm trying to win favor with the feminists or appear as I'm highly developed myself. I have all kinds of shadows that are inherited through my culture that I look at and I'm like, wow, that's pretty weird. Possessiveness of the feminine, arrogance, manipulation. I've done all of that. But I think it's through self-witnessing that I've seen these patterns and how they show up, particularly in partnership with the feminine. And be like, that's not spiritual. That's very human. That's very animal of me to do that, to feel jealousy, to want to control people so that I feel better. So that's a bit of a long rant, but I'm pretty passionate about it, as you can tell. And I think I tried to write this article not disrespecting or dismantling what Buddhism has done for the world and what those practices gave me and what that commitment to awakening did. I think that Buddha just awakened at a time when women's rights was not on the docket, and that's okay because it was a long time ago. I think we've evolved since then a lot. Consent, awareness about oppression and what it means to be stood on by something more powerful. And, I think in that way, the idea of perfection is, we can just wipe that off the board and say it's a practice, realizing oneself and accepting one's own humanity and limitations and flaws, just as much as we can celebrate the idea that by practicing we can be of better service to the world and become more authentically loving and kind and compassionate to all of the places where there's suffering. And again, that's probably what Vipassana taught me the most, is I'm not going to transcend suffering, but I can certainly learn to be kind and caring to my suffering and the suffering of others. And I can be very vigilant when the pull of comfort in the short term is drawing me away from the present moment and making me feel like there's something more compelling only if I fill this void of pain with some more pleasure. Right? That's a very slippery slope. And maybe the last thing I'll say is, in my experience, the feminine teaches embodiment. It teaches like how to be in the world, not pull away from it in order to become adept. Both have value. Right? The mundane, the being with this in a nurturing way. So, do with that what you will. Look like from some of the hearts and thumbs up that it resonates. And let's practice for a little bit, and then we can have some shares. So, seated, lying down, whichever you prefer. Take a moment to ground in. And as you ground in, just start to notice what I just spoke about, how that feels in the body. Right? For me, it gets me fired up. I feel passion in my chest. I feel my heart pulsing a little bit. How does that all sit for you as you start to feel your breath? Being with the sensations in the body. And just notice air moving in and out through the nostrils, down the throat, into the lungs, into the belly. And perhaps tuning into the beat of your heart, this ancient rhythm of heart pulsing, blood moving. And let's maybe do something a little bit deeper with this teaching. Feel what it was like to be in the womb of your mother. Before your lungs were breathing air, you were absorbing fluids and nourishment through your belly. You were floating in an amniotic sac of fluid. Before your mind was thinking, your ears were listening to the heartbeat and the filtered voice of your mother. And she was inevitably feeling you presence in her body as you grew. Imagining all of her hopes and dreams for you. Her deep wish for you to live a good life, to be peaceful and happy and to not suffer. So just breathing into this maternal desire for peace and happiness and kindness that mothers bestow upon their children. And giving thanks for all of the mothers, for the unbroken line of life giving to life, giving to life, giving to life. And into that equation, we can invite in the balanced masculine. The strength and the providership and the protection and the care. And just feel into the potential of these two energies to be balanced by our creators and inside of our own body. So let's just breathe with that sense of wanting to cultivate balance of masculine and feminine energies in the body. In, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. All the way in and softening on the way out. Breathe with your belly. Feel the presence of this womb-like energy as you breathe down into the hips. Using your strength to draw air in and your softness to let it all out. Bringing more depth and more awareness into the breath. Continuing to feel the body. Feeling your capacity for nurturance and care, the way in which you give to others, cultivating that strength inside of every breath. Giving to yourself this gift of life. Caring for your emotional body. physical body. And your spiritual body. Keep that breath going nice and deep. All the way in, all the way out. Softening on the exhale. To breathe with this sense of divine feminine, divine masculine mixing in the body. The best qualities of both. Regardless of where you came from, what you were birthed into, you can cultivate this sense of balanced divinity within each breath. Just a few more. More breaths, and then we'll pause. Two more, nice and deep. Okay, let that go. Take a nice deep breath all the way in. Sigh the voice out. Then take this next one in and hold it. And again, feeling this amniotic fluid of life, the resonance of which is still in your body, moving from the belly up the spine, through the heart, into the mind, blessing the mind with the grace of forgiveness and softness. As you exhale all the way out. And just pause at the bottom of the breath. What part of the eternal Father and the eternal Mother do you need to rest in? Can you also simmer in your own capacity to divinely parent yourself? To choose your soul family where you feel like you belong. To forgive your birth family for the places where they didn't meet you and may never. Can we allow it all to be there? While still finding ways to provide for ourselves what we truly need to thrive. Okay, take a nice deep breath all the way in. Raise it up, sigh it out. And another deep breath all the way in. Back once again to this heartbeat, your heartbeat, heartbeat of the mother. Feeling the sacredness of the maternal instinct to care for and nourish. And the sacredness of the paternal instinct to provide and protect. Feel those balanced in your heart. Know that you can give that to yourself. And you can cultivate it with others. Here we go. Slow it back down. Slow it back down. Okay. Take a nice deep breath all the way in. Sigh the voice out. Then take this last one in and hold it. When you're ready on your own time, sigh it all the way out into emptiness. And perhaps imagine all of the loving mothers in this world holding you. All of their hands resting on your body, reassuring you that it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. And all of the loving fathers of this world resting their hands on you. And you can tell by their heavenly gaze that everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And so just softening into that deep knowing. Everything's okay just the way it is. You're all right. You were designed to be here. Your freedom lives here in this eternal moment. And this freedom is your birthright. To witness your suffering and your desire for comfort from a place of equanimity and balance, with kindness and compassion in your heart. And to wish that same balance and equanimity for all beings. forgiveness for all of the silenced mothers and absent fathers of this world. Can we find compassion and forgiveness for the children that they raise? Can we turn towards our own inner child and reparent it every day, being that loving presence, that sacred blend of masculine and feminine? May we build strong bonds with those in our lives that provide that for us, that we can reciprocate that too. That loving sense of belonging, that sense of balance. And can we look to teachers who model a relational way of being in the world? Of giving and receiving. So just one final moment of considering your mother and your father and just allowing them to be the way they are, forgiving them for their perceived shortcomings, the ways in which they haven't provided for you. Whether they're here on planet Earth or whether they've died, just checking to see, is there any resentment left to release? Can you forgive their parents and their parents and their parents' parents? Can you forgive the way that that still lives inside of you? That potential for causing harm. And feel how it's the awareness that allows it to change, not the judgment, not the wishing it was different, just simply the awareness. So it makes the prayer for life very simple. We just pray for awareness. Please help me be more aware. Help me witness myself when I'm caught in my own struggles. And help me be kind in that witnessing. That's the practice. A kind-hearted witness. And if our heart feels closed, we just breathe it open again. Relaxing back into being. Nurturing our capacity to witness. With this silent devotion to ending suffering. All right, friends, that's the end of our practice for today. Just welcoming you back into your space, feeling your body, Noticing your surroundings, inviting movement in, just letting your body readjust to this moment as we come to a close. Blessings on your path.